Good evening, Shortcuts. This is list 2 for March 15th. Now, I received some feedback in the last few weeks that in my, quote, classic rock list, I haven't had much classic rock. I've taken that feedback to heart, and we've gone classic rock tonight for sure, as you're about to find out. Anyway, who recognizes this t-shirt? Now, we've already mentioned Brian Eno in list 1, and here he appears again. Roxy Music's second album, For Your Pleasure. One of the great gatefolds. The Japanese pressing of this is stellar. And if you don't know this record, do yourself a favour. Now, why this t-shirt? Well, because in fact, there's Mr. Eno right there. There's Brian Ferry, Phil Manzanera. And there they all are on the inside sleeve. How cool is that? I loved it so much, I made the t-shirt. Oh, for those of you who don't know, I do make my own t-shirts. Roxy Music, For Your Pleasure. Morrissey once said, this is the only album that matters. Eno is extraordinary on this record, but Phil Manzanera, man, every song, Strictly Confidential, Editions of You, The Bogus Man is an absolute trip. It's nuts, but great. But my favourite song is the greatest elegy to a sex doll that's ever been put to wax. In every dream home, a heartache. Look up the words, listen to the song, and wait for the guitar solo. All right. Now, a few weeks back, I had a George Harrison best of. What I've got now is really cool. Japanese first presses of some of George Harrison's 70s output. That's his self-titled. This, of course, is Extra Texture, the clever bit being the texture in the sleeve. Really lovely records. Now, for those of you who are George Harrison fans, I have something really rare and really special from George Harrison to come in the coming weeks. Now, I mentioned in the previous video that every so often my friends from Shibuya, they put a little asterisk and a little aside if they think they found something that's of note. Now this had an asterisk beside it. Now this you might recognize as Led Zeppelin 4. The gatefold, the beautiful image on the inside. Now why did it get a star? Well, this obi is unusual. I'd never seen this obi before. This is the 1979 repress. And my friends in Shibuya tell me that this is their favourite 70s pressing of Led Zeppelin. So there you go. Let me just say, no higher praise. Apparently it's from 1979. One of the hardest pressings to get. It was a limited edition. I haven't played it, but they reckon it's the nuts. Brian Ferry's solo records are also rather wonderful. Now this Boys and Girls had that huge hit Slave to Love, but it's also the Brian Ferry record that's closest in tone and feel to Avalon. So if you like Roxy Music Avalon, then there's a lot to love here in perfect condition. Now talking about sound quality, I have a very, very, very good friend in Perth, Barry, who's a member of the club. but I've known him outside the club. I stayed in his house last year when we went over as a family holiday to Western Australia. And he pinged me last night saying that his Japanese first press of Madman Across the Water was magnificent. And he has a stellar sound system, let me tell you. Anyway, on that basis, I brought it out again. This is Madman Across the Water, the Japanese hard cardboard gate press. When Barry says something sounds good, you take note. All right, now, come on, classic rock and pop. I love the Bangles. Every time I see this record, I pick it up because it is great. Now, slightly different greatness, but still equally great. This is a 1976 Japanese pressing of Ziggy's Stardust and the Spiders from Mars from David Bowie. RPL 2102, you can look up the reviews. On the blogosphere, this pressing is revered. It is an immaculate copy. This is as good a sleeve as you'll ever find. AAA, mastered from the original audio tapes. Just sounds wonderful. Now, as does this. I told you classic rock. The Japanese hard cardboard gate press of A Death Races by Queen. Maybe slightly in the shadow of A Night at the Opera, which followed, mostly because it just doesn't have, Bohemian Rhapsody on it. But this is still right up there in the Queen, oeuvre, especially if you love Somebody to Love. Now here's a record I've never had before. I don't know if I'll ever have it again. It's really hard to find, and because it's really hard to find, it's bloody expensive. It is Hysteria by Def Leppard, Japanese first press. You may have heard of it. It dominated the 80s. Probably, I remember when I was, the year this came out, which I think was 87, it was the year that Bad came out as well, MJ, or certainly around about the same time. I remember just being at school and just, the singles from this record, Pour Some Sugar, Made Love Bites, Armageddon it just went on and on. It just felt like every song was been released as a single. I don't know how many copies this sold. A crazy amount. Anyway, more classic rock. Also had some feedback that Springsteen's The River, Japanese first press, was magnificent. And here you are, probably the best copy of it I've ever had. And similarly this, I think this is one of the great live albums. Now it's not classic rock, it's reggae, but Marley's live album, Trenchtown Rock, Burning and Looting, Lively Up Yourself, the highlight being the 8 or 9 minutes of No Woman No Cry, which is the definitive version of No Woman No Cry. I had a really nice Aussie copy. I don't anymore. I have the Japanese copy because it sounds miles better. Now, we're going to have one classic pop, one classic rock, and then one little curveball that I've thrown into the mix just because I love it, and I'm hoping somebody out there might love it too. This one of the perfect debut pop albums. I've had it loads. Loads of people have bought it. They all love it. It's great. She's So Unusual. Cyndi Lauper, still in the shrink wrap. Still got the OB. Absolutely perfect condition. Girls just want to have fun. Is there ever been a better single than Time After Time? It's on a pretty short list. Anyway, Cyndi Lauper, I'm a big fan. This record is surprisingly hard to find, considering how many squazillion copies that were sold. It is Boston's debut album. More Than a Feeling, Rock and Roll Band, Smoking, Hitch a Ride. Again, that mixture of Japanese attention to detail, but also just the quality of the vinyl. Just for a record that has a product, considering it was pretty much made in someone's basement. I mean, it's a pretty legendary story. Tom Schultz, what an absolute legend. I've only had maybe 3 or 4 of Boston, and I've heard nothing but love. Now, this is my curveball, just because I love Tracy Thorn. This is Eden by Everything But the Girl. Early 80s, maybe 1984. Ambient pop of the highest order. Just oozes class. And I would say that if you enjoyed the Sade records that I've been making appearances sporadically in the list from over this last little while, Eden by Everything But the Girl will give you nothing but happiness. It's an utterly delightful record. So there you go. True classic rock and classic pop with a smidge of reggae. I hope that you agree this time I've fulfilled the brief. Highlights: that Springsteen, that Elton John, that Led Zeppelin, and that David Bowie. I'm not sure, or it certainly might be some time before I have copies of those records that are as good as the ones that are here. My personal favourite though, For Your Pleasure, Roxy Music, and for ultimate cheese factor, Hysteria. Thanks a lot for listening, and rock on. Shortcut time.